All right, I'm here with Mike Kim. Mike Kim is, I was telling him before we started recording, I feel like I've known Mike for many, many years just through a connection with the Bottom Line accounting firm. And he's been a client there for a while. I was a client for many years before we recently acquired it. And I've just heard great things about you, man. So thank you so much for being here. I'm excited that you're here. And I really want to talk to you about the brand strategy stuff because that's something that I'm currently thinking through right now. So
Well,
thank you for being here.
we'll see if I live up to the billing.
Oh yeah.
So that but it's an honor to
Yeah.
be here, man.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm from what I know of your story, when did you start in the online business world?
I started the journey started in 2013. I
Okay.
started blogging weekly then.
Yeah.
And it was because I had nothing else to do. I was working as the CMO of a company, but I had come out of a big career shift because I had been on staff at a church where I was
Okay.
doing music.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, couldn't think of a bigger shift, right, in career.
Right.
But what I realized in retrospect was I missed having avenues for self-expression. I missed doing some creative work, and I needed an outlet. And because I was going through these changes, I started to blog here and there, and the people who knew me would read it, and then they stopped reading it, and not even my mom read it. And then I was like, maybe I should learn how to do this a little bit more intentionally. I picked up a blogging course somewhere on the internet from some guy I'd never heard of. Turns out his name was Michael Hyatt, so he was pretty
Okay.
respected. And
Pretty
he just
solid.
had good SEO. It's not like I knew who he was. I think he just had good SEO, and I found him and I liked his stuff. And I just started I just started writing online,
Mhm.
but I was the CMO of this company. And so I could see how they were like there was a ton of overlap.
Right.
So the things that I was learning in the online marketing world, I would apply to work and we got great results. And then the things that I was doing at work, I would teach in the online marketing world on my blog.
Right. Right.
And I joined a few communities as it started to grow. Long story short, I launched a podcast in 2014, and I thought I was late to the game
Yeah.
back
It's like
then.
super early.
Yeah, I was early. And then now, and then I went full time in my own business in 2015. So it was actually a lot happened in a very short amount of time.
Wow.
But yeah, that's how it happened. And it just worked out really well for me.
It's so interesting. I didn't know that specific. I didn't know the exact origin story. So for me, these are very similar, which is very very funny. I was a high school band director
Mm.
in 2013, 2014, and then I started a blog about personal finance called Millennial Money Man, and then I went full time with that blog in 2015, and that was I miss those days a lot because that was like peak blog time. Like that was like I look back on those years a lot. I'm like that was probably I have a lot of fun in my career, but that was the most fun I felt like when you could just very easily write something. And because I started the same way, I was just writing about I paid off a bunch of student loan debt very quickly. And so I was just writing about it. I shared it with friends. And it kind of went like mini viral, some of the stuff that I went, but it just like within my friend group, not nationally or anything. But then I was able to grow a following just from writing the things in my head. And I'm curious how you feel about this because blogging has changed, as you know, tremendously over the last 10 years. I mean, it's gone through a total transformation. Some people have said it's totally dead. I don't know about that. But like, I'm curious how that transition has been for you over the years with blogging. You had the rise of SEO. It was very easy to get traffic. And then ChatGPT came out a couple of years ago, and then SEO got got crushed in a lot of different ways. So what has that been like for you, kind of going from blogger to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting to look at those eras, right? Like
Hmm.
you had the industrial era where the industrial economy, which is making stuff, refrigerators, cars, right?
Right.
And then we have the knowledge economy, and that was where you and I grew up, right?
Yeah.
Like go to school, get a good job, and you'll be fine. And I
Yeah.
mean, me being Asian, that's all we were told. Like you got to be a
Right.
lawyer, doctor, and don't shame the family, right? And so that was really emphasized. But then the digital economy comes along and it changes everything. It makes knowledge shareable and scalable through blogs,
Hmm.
like we were writing. But then that sort of gave way to the creator economy, and
Yep.
now you have to change the way that you're sharing your knowledge in creative ways. I got annoyed when Instagram came out. I was like great on Twitter and Facebook just writing text. I was
Yeah.
like, I did not get into this to learn how to be a photographer or a video editor. Drove me nuts, right?
Yeah.
So we had to learn that, and then probably more in like the last 2 years, I would say, like once Instagram stories came out,
Hmm.
and then everyone else started to follow suit after copying Snapchat. Now we're in the intention economy,
Right.
and now we have AI, of course. And I actually think what's going to happen, and this is the strategy that I'm trying out for the next 6 months, is going back to blogging, but longer
Really.
form. Yeah, because people don't want to chase my stuff all over the place. And
Right.
I don't, I'm a one man show in that regard. I can't keep up with the output that people who have teams are
Hmm.
doing. And neither do I really want to.
Yeah.
I want to have my best thinking each week published on a Tuesday, and I will read that entire issue direct to camera for my podcast and my YouTube channel. Now, I'm
Yeah.
only about 5, 6 weeks into it as of this recording, but I can already see the responses I'm getting on all channels. People are pinging me on LinkedIn, literally texting me, "Oh my gosh, I love this. I've not had one single complaint about this is the same content that you had on your podcast versus YouTube." I think it's helping people quiet the noise
Hmm.
and huddle closer to the ones they want to follow. And the analogy I've been using, Bobby, is like, if we're hanging out with a bunch of friends, like at a bar or something, out at a restaurant, and all of a sudden, like the fire alarm goes off and no one knows what the heck is going on, we're going to huddle together with the people we know closer. Like, hey,
Hmm.
man, like, let's stay together. We're going to get out of here. I actually think that's what's going on. Like in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, there's so much noise on the internet. People don't want to find necessarily a new voice. They want to find the people they can trust
Yeah.
and simplify it. So that's kind of my play, and there's precedent for that. Dan Coe's done a really good job of this online. Ryan Levesque, who's I've gotten to know over the last year, has become an inspiration for me to follow
Hmm.
this, and it suits my skill set. So I actually think it's coming back. I might not get great SEO, but I'm going to have a lot more loyalty, with my readers, and with my
Yeah.
listeners.
I that's so crazy because I've been thinking the last 2 or 3 weeks, because the path that I took was I had this personal brand, and then I started another company called Laptop Empires that was not ever something I thought I was going to do, but we started teaching people how to do digital marketing, and I got into the info product space, um, and then I got into a mastermind probably in 2018 where it was a bunch of SEO guys in the money blogging space that were crushing it. And so then I went down that path and I was like, okay, there's a ton of money in SEO and affiliate marketing. And so I started doing that really heavy. And I just slowly got away from blogging, which was the thing that I loved the most, just writing long form content. And I kind of found a little bit of I've always wanted to continue doing that because it's to me that's like my artistic release. I guess it's the thing that makes me happy, and so I've kind of found a little bit of that again in email marketing, because
Mhm.
I feel like I do daily emails for the company, and I feel like it's not the same as blogging because it's still shorter and it's more direct response, but it's like I can at least scratch the itch to write. But as I've kind of I went the other way and I started hiring employees and building team and all of that. And I felt like I was getting further and further away from the thing that I really love the most. And now that I'm trying, we use EOS. I don't know how familiar you are with the
Mhm.
EOS system and structure, but now that I'm in the visionary seat and now it looks like I'm trending towards just being in that seat in the business, all I want to do is write now, and I want to go back. So a couple of weeks ago, I was thinking like, what if I just start writing on the blog for the company? We've rebranded to Stellar Brands now, and I want to talk to you about that because you're a
Mhm.
branding expert and all those things. But I was just like, what if I just start writing long form blog posts and sending that out? Because that's what I want to do more than anything. I agree with you. I think that I hate the noise. I hate all like when it was the pandemic and TikTok came out, that was kind of when I started backing away from my personal brand, really, because I was like, oh, is this what you have to do? You've got to dance on TikTok and like nobody cares about blogs anymore. And like, this is not what I signed up for. And so that's when I kind of started moving towards the like building an employee, building out a team with employees and stuff. But I love the idea of just going back to blogging, and that you're doing that. So that kind of like, that's affirming for me. It's like, I feel like it's
I,
something I want. And I'm
yeah, I mean,
curious,
you're
like,
not alone. I think for me, the blogging was like a slow decay.
yeah,
And then I just got so caught up in the marketing things that I had to do. And then I started writing some books. And so that's where I was doing a lot of my long form work. But you don't see the payoff on that until a year later, a year and a half
right.
later. And then by the time it's done, you can't write anymore. You're sick of writing. And then you're in book promo mode where all you're doing is really going on podcasts. And so it was kind of like I would sit around when I'm like, gosh, when did I stop blogging? That's
Right.
weird. And for me, I think some people are this way. Like you you carve new pathways in your thinking through writing.
Hmm.
And I just released a book with a friend and co-author about a month ago. And when I finished that manuscript, I did most of the heavy lifting on the book writing. When I finished, I felt like I graduated from a phase in my life. Like that, it was 10 years that I was in business on my own. I'd
Hmm.
written 3 books with my name on the cover, 2 that I had ghostwritten. One was super famous. And I was like, I think this chapter of I've shared most of what I feel I need to on these topics on personal branding. I'll continue to teach about them. And Ryan Levesque, who I just mentioned earlier, he recommended a book that I read called The Second Mountain
Okay.
by David Brooks. He talks about how, we all climb this first mountain only to realize there's another one in the horizon. That's the one that really gives us fulfillment. And
Right.
so this year for me has been descending slowly the first mountain. And I'm like, well, I see that valley. And looking at my life 10 years ago, the way I went through that first valley when I made all those career shifts was through writing.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I'm like, okay, I'm going to commit to this weekly for 6 months. It doesn't need to have a minimum word count, but I'm averaging around 1,500 words
Mhm.
per post right now.
Yeah.
And it feels good, man. That's what I would say. Like for the first time in a really long time, I feel like my creative juices are flowing. I'm sharing some of the things I've been thinking really deeply about, and it doesn't matter if I monetize it or not. I just know that I'm
Yeah.
thinking better. So that's kind of where I'm at. But what matters is it feels good. It
Yeah.
feels good. Yeah.
That's good to know, because I felt like when I was blogging, because I made okay money my first 2 or 3 years, like enough to survive. I didn't start making, like, the business didn't get to like 6-figure months until, and this was probably kind of early, I guess, but it was like maybe 3 years in, after I started doing the info products. But there was something about the joy of just being able to write and not worry about monetizing it all, and not
Mhm.
worry about, I don't know, just not worry about the strategy of marketing, and how do I need to do, how do I need to warm up these leads and capture these leads, and, put them through these evergreen funnels and all this stuff. And what I'm trying to figure out now, maybe you can help me with this. Now that I do have these companies, it's like I want to go back to the writing, but how does that support the business, or does it even need to? And can I just write?
I think it supports all the businesses. I mean, I would absolutely read Warren Buffett's blog if he blogged every day.
Right.
I
Yeah.
would, we're seeing these trends, which I think is a good thing, where you're seeing legitimate entrepreneurs, people who have legitimately had success, come out now and talk and share their knowledge on podcasts and books and things like that. I think that's a good thing, because in the earlier days, I noticed when I was up and coming, there are a lot of people who actually didn't ever do anything,
Mhm.
and they were just good marketers. And you'd have that whole kind of snake oil salesman thing. And now I love that the narrative and the attention is going towards the people who have really built multiple businesses, or built businesses and built, IP and written books, because those are things that you can't buy overnight.
Right.
And as they share the journey of who they had to become in doing it, that's where a lot of the gold is. Like some of these people who are very, very popular in the public eye now. Dan Martell's a great example. I've never met Dan, but I heard of him like 8 years ago. My friend was in a mastermind with him, and the guy who wrote the forward to my book, Todd Herman, is good friends with Dan. That's how I heard about him.
Mhm.
And I could just see his YouTube channel just over the last 2-3 years. But I knew that this guy was a legit entrepreneur.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I'd like to learn from that guy. So I actually think it feeds into everything. There's some situations where the brand is more popular than the founder. And then it like flips. The founder becomes more popular than the brand. Like Sarah Blakely is a great example of that. I
Yeah.
don't use her products. They're not for me, you know,
Right.
like, so,
Yeah.
but I would listen to anything she has to say. So it's interesting. And I think that's where things are going, because if AI can churn out all the direct response copy that we need,
Right.
what can't it do? It can't tell us those human stories. And that's what I'm really loving leaning back into. And I think that's where a lot of the fulfillment's coming from.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I like, for me, when I was just writing for those 3 years where I didn't really know what I was doing, and I was just writing the first, I had, I think, 13,000 people on my email list. I'd never thought about selling anything to them. It was, all I did was I sent my blog post to them. And then I was amazed, and I teamed up with I hired a direct response copywriter, and, we did these Jeff Walker launch style
Yeah.
emails. And these people who I'd never sold to before, we ended up doing, I think the first launch, it was like a $247 product. We did $139,000 in revenue in a weekend from this list of people that I had never sold anything to. I just like poured my heart out to these people for so long. And so that's not the reason I want to get back into writing. I actually want to do it for me, because I agree with you. It's like, that's where I get my best ideas and where I kind of refine, like, what do I actually think about things? But I'm hoping that what happens if I can start doing that again, that one, it's work that I enjoy, but two, then when we do market or we do have a product to sell, that it's so much easier. It just takes time to build that back up. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I do feel like there's the grind of always trying to monetize stuff, is, I don't know, just draining or something. I mean, it's just, even with direct response, with email marketing, there's so many. I have friends that are like direct response copywriters, and they're like, you always have to sell every single time. When you send an email, you always sell. You always link to a product. You always, and I just don't want to do that. I just want to write.
Mhm.
And so I'm hoping that your thesis on this is correct, and I think it is largely because there's so much slop out there now that, you know, I don't know. It's very interesting. And so I do know that you do a lot. You talk a lot about AI, and you just kind of mentioned it. Where do you see, I mean, what do you see that people are doing effectively with AI? And what do you see that people are doing incorrectly, especially when it comes to building maybe a personal brand or any kind of brand?
Yeah, I think a couple of thoughts there along the lines of the first thing you said about like the Jeff Walker launches. I mean, I've done my fair share of those, and they worked.
They do work. Yeah.
And now I'm like, I don't really want to do that style anymore. And maybe this will sort of tie in, I think, to the AI thing that you just asked about too. One of the things I've been doing a lot this past year is just going waiting lists,
Hmm.
like almost never having anything for sale, but collecting interest all the time. So sometimes it's real subtle, like, hey, let me write a post or an email. And by the way, I'm thinking about doing an intensive or an accelerator to help people write their books. I just released my third one and I'm thinking about doing this. It's really fulfilling. If that is of interest to you, just go to this link. And it might not be the same webinar registration numbers you'd get in like a Jeff Walker launch, but you know that those people are interested. And now
Yeah.
I can talk to them literally through a Google form that I set up in 2 seconds
Hmm.
and email them from my Gmail account. And they feel like it's super personal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey guys, I'm going to do like an open house here for like 30 minutes. We'll just jump on my personal link on Zoom. And I just want to know where you're at and how I might create something before the end of the year where I can serve you. I'm
Hmm.
thinking maybe a one-on-one intensive, maybe a 2-day intensive with 3 or 4 of you if you fly over here to New York. And for the rest, if those aren't options, they're either time travel constraints or cost restraints. I might do like a 4-week on Zoom accelerator, for a much cheaper option. And there's no fear of failure.
Right.
There's no landing page. There are no ads. There's no like, oh, I'm going to do this epic book accelerator and then realize nobody bought it and I feel like an
Right.
idiot. And it's and even those things like, hey, I'm going to email you straight from my email account, or we're going to use my personal link on Zoom. Like those are the things that I think pass that sniff test,
Yeah.
and people are like, okay, this feels like it's really Mike, right? And I think
Yeah.
tying that back to what people are doing with AI, it's like you're trying to build a personal brand using AI. It's kind of a weird, like it's a
Yeah.
dissonance. Ryan puts it really well. I love how he said, I think it's like artificial versus artisanal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay if you are in a market or a product line that has to sell all the time, like supplements. And I get a lot of direct response copywriters come from that world and they come into the coaching world. And I'm like, it's not the same product. It's not the same
Mm-hmm.
service. It's not the same buyer journey. So where I see AI helping is a lot of the grunt work. Obviously, people will use it to get call transcripts done and all that other stuff that nobody else wants to do. What I do a lot now is I use it like Jarvis in the Marvel movies with Tony Stark. I am finding that typing is a really bad way to input anything right into a
Mm-hmm.
computer. It's just slow, it's sloggy. I like writing through typing, but when I'm ideating, I don't like writing.
Right.
And so I'm walking around, the kitchen or whatnot with Claude on my phone, and I'm just voice talking into it. And I'm like, all right, here's a couple of things that I've been thinking about this thing, and this thing. And I want to figure out a way to cross reference these so that there's some contrast. And I think that's the next piece where in our content creation, are we able to curate different streams of thought and match them and map them to each other so that there's some interesting angles around it? Um, Going a little bit deeper around that, I think one of the things that people are overlooking in this age of AI is the importance of taste and curation.
Mm-hmm.
And when I've tried to explain this, elaborate it, I'm like, all right, I'm just going to take Rick Rubin as an example, one of the greatest music producers of our time, doesn't play an instrument, doesn't touch the soundboard, has produced people like Elton John and Adele, very, very high up
Right.
there. Like, everybody listens to, very inspired. And the Beastie Boys, and Eminem. Like, I mean, you talk about the whole gamut, right? And this guy just went to NYU in college, and I love his book. And I watch almost anything that I see coming across online just to dive into his creative mind. And all this guy did was go to bars and shows and clubs, and he acquired a sense of taste. And I think that for a lot of us who are experts in our industries, we've leaned so hard on that word
Mm-hmm.
expertise, but we've forgotten we have taste.
Yeah.
Like, when something that you write is going to land. That when you look at a company to acquire, like, it looks good on paper, but there's something about it that doesn't taste quite right. There's
Sure.
something off here. And it's the way that we see people's websites or their writing. And I think human beings are hopefully going to tap more back into that. And that's why they can already say, like, I can kind of tell that AI wrote that. It could be like a regular person. They'll say, it feels like AI wrote this or created it. And the more we exercise that muscle, the more obvious it'll become. It's sort of like, you ever try to convince like your parents, your grandparents that the video they're watching is not real?
I've never done
And you
that,
can't
but yeah.
explain why. It's just you have taste. You've like grown up watching videos and they're like, oh my God, look at Trump. He's in the WWF. And I'm like, that's not real, And
Right.
I don't know how else to explain that right now, but that's I think where we're going in the next 12 months.
Yeah.
People are going to tap back into this sense of taste. And
Right.
that's a good thing.
God, I hope so. Um, so do you buy into, because I feel like since ChatGPT became popular, the whole, it's, if you look on X, like if you're active on Twitter, X, whatever, it's just been this like, just wait, AI is taking over everything. Just kind of, just trust me, bro. Like you just see posts like that, especially if that's what you get into your algorithm, where it's just constant AI. I don't. Well, I want to ask you, how do you feel like it's going to be replacing jobs at scale, and we're all going to be on universal basic income? Like, do you see that kind of path, or do you feel like it's fine? People are seeing that it's something maybe not that.
Man, you're the first person to ask me this, so get ready. I got a lot of thoughts around this. So
Okay.
I swing between extremes. If I watch too much YouTube, I'm like, oh my God, we're all gonna die. Like,
Right.
I'm not gonna make it to 50 years old. We are screwed. We're gonna have to get the mark of the beast and digital IDs and everything. We're
Right.
just gonna be screwed, right? And then I go out, I walk around my town, which is like a pretty bustling town in New Jersey, right outside the GW Bridge heading into Manhattan. Or I travel. I was in Korea earlier this year. My dad passed, so I was like walking around a lot. And I went to Africa back in February to
Oh wow.
Uganda. And um, like I'm just walking around these places, and first, nobody knows what ChatGPT is. And
Right.
second, there's not even internet here. Like, you know, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
really? Is everything I see here just going to burn to the ground because of AI? Like, is this really what's going to happen? And I think that when we when we place ourselves in self-contained environments like our phone screen and the TV and YouTube,
Hmm.
which is actually a very small window by which to interpret the world, the things that we see there seem really big. But once you get yourself outside of that, outside of a self-contained world and into nature and into the world and actually see how much land there really is that we take for granted, and how long it can take to drive from here to DC, or to, let alone Florida, let alone to Vietnam, and fly there,
Yeah.
you realize there's still parts of the world that do not have electricity. You can't drive a Tesla. I have one before Elon went a little wacky.
Right.
Um, there are places that I can't drive that car because there are no chargers.
Hmm.
Like, I look at that infrastructure, I'm like, who's going to build all that? And then you look at OpenAI for from recent stats, they're burning through like 86 million a day.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
doesn't make any, like, how is that sustained? What are they going to do? Charge us all $500 a piece to use ChatGPT every month? Like, is that really going to be sustainable? They just announced a new web browser that's supposed to take over Chrome, and they are absolutely going to run ads on ChatGPT, because we saw that when we were growing
Oh.
up. Facebook had to do it. Where's the money going to
Yep.
come from? We don't pay to use it. And they just announced a deal with Walmart where you can buy stuff from Walmart right on ChatGPT. Okay, fine, great, but there's still a finite number of human beings,
Right.
finite number of money, no matter how much governments print in terms of commerce. And if you really look at it, and you're more the finance guy than I am, I mean, these companies are just kind of circle jerking. They're just robbing Peter to pay Paul. We'll build you chips for ChatGPT, says Nvidia, if you promise to invest $100 billion into
Right.
Nvidia, or vice versa, whatever. And you're like, come on,
Yeah.
man. Right? So it's a weird thing. I don't know where we're going to be in a year. So the realist in me does not think that's going to happen anytime soon. I think that there are going to be some real issues.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, what, yesterday there was some petition that went out with like 100 or 50, 150 like really, really formative minds in the world that all signed, like, let us ban super intelligence. This is not good for
Yeah.
us. So it's weird. I don't know how we're going to handle it as a species, but I hope to God that we figure this out. I do think that that's serious,
Yes.
but
Well, I think it's serious. I mean, that's this is what you're saying is exactly where I've been going with this, because I have a lot of people that ask me about these questions, and just like you probably do. And I mean, I, even before we acquired the bottom line, like I had to do a lot of thinking, because, a year ago, all I was hearing is that every accountant and every bookkeeper was going to be replaced by AI. And so I was like, I was a little nervous about that. Like, okay, am I going to
Mhm.
make an investment here and then it's going to all fall apart? But then now that I've been involved with it, and this is obviously in the financial space, but there's like there's no real good uses of AI that anybody's using. I mean, there's some little like cool little tools that some of the accounting softwares have put on there, but there's really, what I've realized is that a lot of business is about people.
Mhm.
And especially like in the accounting firm, like it's, most of it is coaching. A lot of it doesn't really have to do with the books or the returns, or the, like, it doesn't have anything to do with that. It's more about just like the coaching of the client, and just listening to them. But then I've wondered about, like, okay, is there gonna be this AGI thing that everybody keeps talking about that takes over everything and controls us? Here's where I've landed. Um, I feel similar to when Google became very prominent and the internet changed, and there was other search engines before that. But once Google figured out how to make money and they started, I mean, they figured out their ad model is great. They can make a ton of money that way. Google has actually not improved in a very, very long time. And I would actually argue that it's gotten significantly worse, especially with the emergence of AI. I mean, I think that that product, even though it was so, I would have liked to have been more aware of business at that time. It just happened so early for me in my life, and I was not involved in business at all. But I'm sure a lot of the chatter was the same. Like, the internet is going to change everything. Everything is going to be replaced. And I think what actually happened is everybody just kind of adapted to using the tools and then figured out what it doesn't do well. But then I think these companies like a OpenAI or whatever, I think they stop innovating once they realize they have to actually make money.
Mm.
Um, and I like Google. I truly think has become far worse as a product. And I kind of feel like that's what's going to happen with a lot of. I think a lot of these AI companies that are doing these Ponzi scheme esque investing. They're not profitable. They don't make money at all. They don't even come close. And I think there are going to be a few that emerge that do figure out how to make money. And I think it's going to look a lot like what you said. It's going to be, partnering with Walmart or running ads or doing the same things that happened with search. And then I think it's just going to stagnate. And
Yeah.
there's then whenever the next thing comes along, and I could be totally wrong. That's kind of the hard part about, I feel like,
Dude,
being in business right now.
people are we are self-centered. We're all about ourselves, and
Yeah.
in this sense, I think it's a good thing. I'm like, I don't want to look at this freaking screen and talk to this robot. I want to get on with my life. And you're seeing this already, where like people are buying flip phones to
Mm-hmm.
disconnect from the internet. There are clubs on college campuses where it's tech-free zones.
Yeah.
They sit down and listen to records and play
Mm-hmm.
board games. Like, think about how wild that is. That's like, and there's funny videos obviously on Instagram where like dads are trying to teach their sons how to knock on the door so they can ask the parent of the girl they want to take on a date out. That's
Yeah.
how backwards it's become. And I'm just like, I feel like that intrinsic instinctive nature of human beings, like it's a lot more resilient than we think. And I do hope that we get to a point where we just like realize like nothing here is real anymore. Like we can't even tell what videos are real or not. And so we're just going to walk away from them
Yeah.
and find something that engages us in some way, shape, or form. Um, I don't really know what's going to happen. Obviously, nobody does, but the way I'm looking at it is, what can I control? I can control what I write. I can control what I output. I can control how I treat my body and how present I am with my loved ones and all those sorts of things. I can control what I invest in and try to make the best of it. But to what end? To what aim?
Mm-hmm.
And in my industry, I started sharing a little bit more about this. I had mentioned a couple of different economies: the industrial economy, the knowledge economy. And right now I don't have great terminology for it, so I'll just like sort of call it the economy of meaning,
Mm-hmm.
where none of this is new. We know that everything is interconnected. Our work life, family, physical health, mental health, fulfillment. We know all of these things are interconnected. We have just become so much worse at a species in recognizing that because of social media,
Right.
because of the commerce that shows up. There used to be sayings, the best things in life for free, or you want the things that money can't buy. We just suck at recognizing that. And one of the things I'm trying to do to challenge the people in my industry where we're coaching, mentoring, and guiding others is we've been able to get away for a really long time saying that I am a one lane specialist. I help you run Facebook ads. I help you look better. I am a physical fitness coach. I am a marketer and I do SEO and help people make gobs of money, but never explain what to do with that money or that status or that wealth to feel more fulfilled in their lives.
Right.
And I think that day is coming where people are going to hold the guides and mentors and entrepreneurs they listen to a higher standard. And I think they should. Like, hey, do you come across as kind of an a-hole like Steve Jobs, or are you like more integrated and grounded? Because that's what I want to pick up on. I want to pick up on that energy. And I don't know what that all is going to look like yet, but I know that what I'm trying to do is show how to my audience how I've tried to become more grounded. and
Right.
somebody not just worth listening to because I'm an expert, but more somebody that is worth emulating or following and trying to embody. And it's something that I never thought would circle back around. But the first book I wrote, You Are the Brand, the most highlighted thing according to Amazon Kindle was, don't build a brand, become your brand, become who you're trying to sell to people.
Mm. Yeah.
And I was like, man, all that other writing, and that's the thing that most people highlighted. I'm like, dang, I thought it'd be like, this is really smart on how to market things, but no, it was that. And I think that's what we're coming to. That's where it's going. That's the only where you can go. If all these
Right.
AI avatars are fake and they look realistic and we're not even watching real people, we got nowhere else to go except
Yeah.
to try to find the real thing. So,
Yeah. It's just such a fascinating thing. What kind of brings me comfort, kind of the same thing you talked about earlier. When I drive around, I realize like AI hasn't really changed anything. Like it doesn't,
mhm.
I mean, maybe it sort of has in the way that some people make marketing copy or something, or just like, I don't know. I'm sure it's made some changes, but if you could just go to like the grocery store or you just drive around, it's like, okay, everything's still the same as it was like 10 years ago or probably even longer. So that brings me some comfort. But I do agree that, and I think the approach you're taking is going back to kind of finding meaning and doing things that you enjoy doing. I think that that's a really smart place to be. So it sounds like you're going to be out kind of in front of where things are actually heading. Um, you talked a little bit about you know working with people that's a big part of your brand. Like you work with people and you help
Mhm.
them determine their branding and what they're going to be. I'm curious how you do that for people, especially because I'm sure you've seen this a lot where, and it happened to me where I had my personal brand and then I don't know if I fell out of love with my personal brand or I don't really know what happened, but I shifted away from it.
Mm.
And it was because I didn't really know how to evolve it. Um, I was very interested in personal finance at the time that I was writing all of my blog posts about it. And I started to kind of go down the path of I was doing like TV stuff, like getting on like local news channels and daily show, morning shows and things like that. And then as soon as I started running a business, I like it was very easy to write about personal finance when I had a steady salary and it was like you can do XYZ with your money every month and here's how you budget and here's how you save. But then once you start a business, it's like my income could be wildly different year to year. And it still
Mhm.
is. Like some years are amazing, some years suck. And so I was like, I don't know how to write about personal finance for the masses anymore. And that's when I feel like I started kind of moving away from my personal brand. How do you help people stay in their personal brand, but evolve it for people that want to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going through this right now, right? And I think where it starts is, are you clearing first? You got to just clear the noise. There's a lot of noise and very little signal, right? There is an abundance of this content, but like a poverty of meaning, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the first thing. Like, can you exercise that muscle to start thinking more deeply and more reflectively? And what I tell a lot of my clients is like, hey, every time you want to level up, quote unquote, level up in your life, that requires you got to acquire a new skill. So what
Right.
is that? And it might not be dancing on TikTok. It might be you need to acquire the skill of learning to sit still for 10 minutes in the morning and write in a gratitude journal.
Right.
And that has changed my life. I've done that for 3 years now and never missed a day. And it's absolutely transformed my life. And I look at that like now it's like all of those 3 years can be distilled into one point on a blog post, right? Write in your gratitude journal. But you earn it. You earn the
Mm-hmm.
right to say that. Um, I think a lot of times it's continuously revisiting what makes you feel something. I have been surprised at this framework. I have a series of 3 questions that I ask people. The first is what pisses you off. The second is what breaks your heart. And the third is what's the big problem you're trying to solve. I came up with that in some workshops that I was doing because I was just trying to help people get to the core of what they were thinking. And I was surprised that those questions resonated with so many people. I thought it was just a throwaway, dumb little thing. And it's ended up making me millions of dollars. And I'm like, all right, I put in a Venn diagram. And it is the first chapter of every book I've written so far.
Wow.
And it's because then I thought about it. I was like, oh, I get it. Because human beings don't think about what they want. They think we think we do, but we don't. We are much more clear on what we don't want.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say, "Hey, what do you want to eat for dinner tonight?" Oh, I don't know. It's anything, your partner says. And then you say, "How about Chinese?" "Oh, no, no, too heavy." "What about Italian?" "No, way too heavy." "No." "Indian?" "No, no, too spicy." No, and you're just so much more clear on what you don't want.
Yeah.
And I realized that we have lost that art of friction. We try to look at what we want and we don't think about what we don't want, or vice versa. So I love up here in Jersey, we get snowstorms here. And when you see someone trying to get their parked car out onto the street out of a bank of snow, you never see them just drive one way. They don't just turn the wheel and just hit the gas because there's no friction. They
Right.
back up, move forward, turn the wheel, back, move. They like friction is what moves you forward. But we don't mentally do that because everything's fed to us on this, slot machine we call Instagram,
Right.
and this algorithm, right? So we just, think for me, give me what I want, and we channel surf. This is not new. This is just human beings, human nature. We channel surf or open our fridge for the third time and look at the same food and wonder, what am I going to make for dinner? I hope that my fridge finally speaks to me and tells me what to make.
Right.
We do that. So what I try to do with clients is find that friction. And that is why I guess I've been surprised, but that's why that question, like, what really pisses you off? What breaks your
Yeah.
heart, has helped them get a little bit more clarity. In the beginning, people are like, well, how am I going to turn that into a business? Valid question. But now I think people are thinking more holistically.
Yeah.
And if you're able to share those things with people, you start to attract people who like the way that you think rather than the words that you say. And
Wow.
that is what is really appealing. Like, that's who I find fascinating. Those are the kind of books I'm reading. That's why I'm reading David Brooks, Naval Ravikant, Nassim Taleb, who wrote this book Anti-Fragile. It's like this thick,
Mhm.
and it's like just the right amount of intellectual strain, but I feel smart because I can kind of understand it. It's not too hard, right? It's hard, but it's not too hard. And I'm
Right.
like, okay, this is fascinating. This is how this guy sees the world. And so I think if you share more how you think and how you see the world, that's the signal that people are trying to find. Um,
Yeah.
and that's what's going to set your apart. And your brand then just becomes a shadow. It follows you rather than you trying to build the shadow,
Right.
So
God, that's
yeah.
amazing. You're good, dude. You're definitely in the right. You're definitely in the right industry. Um, have you ever come across people? And I'm asking as if this is not how I felt personally, but that feel trapped by their personal brand, because I ran into that where I really what after it started, Millennial Money Man started becoming successful and I was making money from it. I just had this realization of like, oh my God, I'm going to have to write blog posts, a couple times a week for the rest of my life. The business is always going to be reliant on me. I'm going to get the same reason that I left my teaching job, where I felt so trapped by the income and by the ability to move up. I'm going to fall into the exact same trap, just maybe with more money than I had before. And I
Mm,
think that that's a big part of why I started trying to go on this, like, well, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to go out and buy these businesses. And I've enjoyed that process and it's been great and I've grown a lot. But I think I did a lot of that to escape this trap that I thought was there. And now, as I talked to you in the very beginning of this podcast, I'm like, I really miss the days when I was just like writing, writing what I thought and like building more of a personal brand. So do you ever coach people through that, or is that a common thing that you run into, or just even something that you think about?
it is common, and I think it's more common in certain types of people. So what I
Hmm.
mean by that are, like, it doesn't surprise me that you're bumping up against a little bit of this because you were a teacher.
Hmm.
So that to me signals you're probably well read, you're educated, you are able to wrestle and hold a lot of different ideas, compare, contrast, teach. So you process the world in a very different way than somebody who has just been a factory worker, no slam on them, or someone working in the back of a kitchen, or someone doing accounting per
Yeah,
se. They're just A, B, C, A, B, C. And oftentimes I envy the ability to be in that kind of routine for
I
a
do
lot of
too.
people. Yeah.
I do
I'm
too.
like, wow, I wish I could turn this brain off sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So in some scenarios, when I see people who have said the same thing for 30, 40, 50 years, whether it's religion, politics, Dave Ramsey saying the same freaking thing on his radio show for God knows how long, I
Yeah.
sort of admire it, but I wouldn't want to be that because I'm just not wired that way.
Yeah.
And what I would say there is that, like, I see a lot of people who aren't just trying to start over, they're trying to start honest.
Mm.
And I think that is where it really starts to weave in. I'll give you an example. Like, Jess, who was from the bottom line, she's been with me for about 10 years. I've been with her for
Wow.
about 10 years. When we met through a good friend of ours, Shrivinia Barber. She introduced us, and I was going through a divorce at the time. I literally remember I was at Universal Studios in Orlando. I had a speaking gig, and I was walking around Harry Potter World by myself. And I was just feeling like crap, obviously.
Mm.
And Jess and I had a call, and there was so much shame around everything. I'm like, look, yeah, my wife's just trying to take me out. I don't know what's going on. I need help parsing all these finances. I've spent a lot of my business stuff on my personal card. I don't have a business card, and I haven't tracked this for like a year. And I can't even imagine sitting down trying to flag every transaction. And she says to me, thank you for being honest. We are going to get you through this. I got you.
Yeah.
And they took care of it. Like 6 weeks later, it was done. They processed everything. And she was the first person that I've ever had those kind of money conversations with.
Mhm.
And I went on, she came on my podcast years ago. We talked in depth about that. And I think that, like, when this all sort of ties down back down into, like, if you're just honest with yourself and able to be honest with the right people, it makes everything so much more easy. And I think for some who are very ABC, like, that's just how they see the world and operate and what's worked well for them. Of course, they're going to say to everyone else, this is how the world works.
Right.
So you're like, okay, they got their place. I admire. You should have been a drill sergeant forever and ever. Like, that would have. I'm just not wired that way,
Yeah.
and that doesn't make me better or worse. And I think that I'm going to be this way. All bets point to I'm probably going to be this way till the day I die.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Barring some crazy tragedy or traumatic thing that shifts how I think or whatever. I've just been more out for the depth. And I think this desire to share from lived experience is just something in me. I've got to share the stories that cost me something. And so what I'm hearing from you is that it's why you probably have had very different types of businesses, not
Mhm.
just one lane. Like, you're curious about the world, and you're now you're encountering the world through businesses and what you're learning about people and life through those businesses. Um, I have a little dog. She's about 3 years old. Her name is Fuji. And when I got her, I like I thought that this dog loved me. She just ran up to me in the dog pet store and was like, just all around. I was like, oh, this is destiny. I'm gonna get her. I super impulsive. I just got a dog. And then my friends came over that day, and she did the same thing to all my friends. And I was like, oh, she played me. This dog played me. I thought I was special. And what we noticed was that she was always licking everything and everybody all the time, even 3 years later. And I'm like, why do you keep doing that? You're so nasty. Stop. And I
Right.
realized this is how a friend of mine said, I don't think that dog has a nose. I think she only has a tongue, and that's how she senses and makes sense of the world. And I was like, that's actually a really interesting takeaway. I think
Yeah.
there are some people that interpret the world or experience the world through this one sense, like my dog does, apparently. She doesn't smell anything, she just licks everything.
Right.
And then there are others who are like, I'm going to use all five of my senses, and I'm going to need to do that by buying 5 different kinds of businesses and writing 5 different kind of books and going on vacations all the time and traveling the world. And this is just how they do it. And
Yeah.
nothing's ever going to change that. So it's just learning to accept and be honest about it. I don't know. That's a long-winded answer. I hope that makes sense in
I
some
thought it was
way,
no,
shape, or form.
that's a fantastic answer. And it's so funny you mentioned Dave Ramsey, because that for me, that was part of my fear, because actually in the personal finance space, a weird thing that happens in that space is that everybody, Dave Ramsey is the best, and he's the best because not just because he's built the biggest company that deals with personal finance. He's the best because they have this really consistent brand message that is always the same. And it's just every single person, all of their talent, every asset that they have, it's like the baby steps. And then in EntreLeadership, they have their, this is similar things. Like everything is so consistent, including
Mhm.
up to Dave himself. And when I saw, I think at the time that he was probably in his late 50s, and I was like, this man says the same thing every single day to people in the experiencing the same situations. And I was like, I can't be that. Like,
Mhm.
I don't think I can do this better than him. And that's kind of goes back to what everybody in the personal finance space does. They try to find ways to differentiate themselves from Dave, which becomes typically them kind of just crapping on Dave. Like
Yeah.
he's evil, he's awful,
Yeah.
he's a this, he's a that. And they're trying to find these like very narrow ways to like say a different message, but his message is so good and it works so well for people. It's really hard to differentiate yourself out of it. And so that was part of, I was just like, can try to be, I can keep trying to figure out some weird way to define myself differently from him, or I could end up just like him and maybe he's happy with where he's at. He's done very well. But I was just like, it just seemed like this kind of glass cage to me of like, I'm going to have the same
Yeah.
conversations with people for the rest of my life about stuff and be trying to differentiate with myself from this company. So I thought your answer was fantastic. And I think, just being honest and also just accepting that that's the way you are and that you don't have to worry about trying to be how someone else is, because I think that in business, it's so easy to do that. I've constantly fight myself of like, every level I get to, I look at like whoever's at the next level and I'm like, oh man, maybe I need to be doing what they're doing. It's just the never ending, like it's a dumb way to look at life. And so that's one of the things I've been working on a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, fantastic answer. And, we're running up on time here. So I want to talk about your book. I want to plug it properly. So this is your new book, own your brand, own your career, a definitive guide to building an authentic personal brand that accelerates your success. Can you tell me about the book and where people can find it?
Yeah. It's on Amazon. We only publish through Amazon. We self-published it. We
Awesome.
do have a free workbook. You don't even need to buy the book at ownyourbrandbook.com. And you can download the exercises to go through. I met this guy, Andy Storch, a couple of years ago through some mutual friends. And he was a speaker, podcaster, online creator type person, but he was more in the corporate world. And he'd done some summits and things like that. So I had guested on a couple of his podcasts and vice versa. And a few years back, he joined a mastermind that I was hosting. And so I got to see him every 2 weeks and really
Mm.
see how he showed up, what his energy was like. And we just got along really well. And I said to him one day, he was in the middle of getting ready to move to Spain, his whole family from Orlando to Spain. And he's like, hey, I'm going to have to duck out of the mastermind. The time zones don't work. And we'll see what I'm going to be up to next. And I said, why don't we write a book together? You've written a book in career development. I've written a book on personal branding. This is clearly a topic that's going to only continue to grow in the corporate world.
Yeah.
Why don't our books just have a baby? and and we add some new things and we updated a lot of stuff for the day and age that we're seeing. And so we did it. And it took about 2 years. And there were a lot of little stops along the way because I was like, hey, well, let's do a webinar first together. Let's try out some of this content, get familiar with each other's work, and do it in front of people so that we can see if it really has some merit to it. And so we took a lot of baby steps along those ways. Like we would do some trainings together, webinars together. I spoke at his event. He spoke at one of my events. And we just had a good chemistry. And so working together was super easy. I knew that he would market the snot out of it because he just has an incredible network in the corporate world. I could work for 10 years and never attain the network he has.
Yeah.
And so to me, that was like a good partner. And I knew that he would drive the book. He was doing a lot of corporate keynotes. And ultimately, though, it really came back to, yeah, it was probably a good business move. But I thought back to how my career started and how I got into business for myself. What pissed me off, what broke my heart, like I just hated going to work every day. Even though I liked the people at my job, I didn't like the practice of going to this job.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me, there was a couple of stories that happened. Like I remember one time I was the marketing director for this company, and I was hosting Thanksgiving. My mom came with her husband, my sister with her then fiance, now husband, came down, and I was married at the time. And so it was just this whole family get together. And I stayed up with my mom drinking till like 1 a.m. We had never done that before. And she was just telling me all these crazy stories from when she was a kid. I was having a blast. All the rest of them went to bed because they're weak, and I was just up throwing shots down with my mom. And I get an email, hey, we need you to come to work tomorrow. I'm like, what? Why? We're not even in retail. We're not open for Black Friday. I just needed to go to work. So I remember going to work the next day, and I loved my boss. We're still, there's actually clients of mine. We
Oh,
help them
really?
with some of their
Nice.
marketing. So there you go. It's not like I didn't like them. I just didn't want to go to work that day. And it was kind of one of those moments where you look back, like, this is never going to happen again. Like, what if I get in an accident and never have that time with my mom again? What if something happens to her? Like, this is an injustice. I don't need to go to
Right.
work. And it started that process of me kind of thinking a lot more about my life. And then I started to think, it's really sad. It really breaks my heart that there's probably like millions of people like me who are good people, have really good things they can share with the world, but they just can't do it because they're stuck at a job they don't like. And they're coming back home, they're drained, they're not showing up with their families or their kids at their best. And I was like, all right, I've helped the few that want to escape that world through my first book, but there's way more people who are in corporate and in the professional space than who are entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
So when I met Andy, I was like, hey, you've got the market. I've got a few credentials and some frameworks I think that can work here. And it's really to help people make sense of their career and find fulfillment. Because, man, work takes up so much a big part of our lives. It's hard to meet people who are really fulfilled in life who hate their job.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's something we take for granted as entrepreneurs. We wake up, we're like generally excited about what we got to do that day. Even if it sucks, we're like, all right, it's worth it. It's mine.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
most people
Yeah.
don't know that feeling. So that's why we wrote it. Yeah.
Wow, man. Well, that's awesome, man. I can relate to that very much. I still remember the feeling every morning at, I don't know, 5 a.m. when my alarm went off when I was a teacher, and I felt instant dread. And I just was like, I can't believe I'm doing this over and over and over again. And then now when I do have hard days now, it's like I never feel that. It's like, oh, I might have to deal with something that sucks, but it's never to that level of just despair and just
Yeah.
awfulness. So I love that. Let me plug the book one more time. Own Your Brand, Own Your Career: The Definitive Guide to Building an Authentic Personal Brand that Accelerates Your Success. This was a great conversation, man. You lived up to the hype. Everybody
Oh,
said great
thank
things
you.
about you, and I love what you're doing. I'd love to have you on again sometime because I'd love to go deeper into the personal branding and how just the nuance of it and how you do things. But thank you for your time. I appreciate it. It was very wonderful meeting you.
Anytime, man. Anytime. I'm looking forward to the next time we talk.
Awesome, man. Thanks, Mike.
Cool. Thanks, Bobby.